Welcome back to Season 6 of the Group Practice Accelerator podcast, brought to you by Polaris Healthcare Partners, where we leverage decades of healthcare and business experience to drive growth in successful group practices just like yours. If you're a healthcare entrepreneur and you're interested in building, scaling, or exiting your group practice, you've found not only the industry's leading resource for business education, but a team of trusted advisors dedicated to helping you achieve and exceed your goals. In short, the team at Polaris creates clarity, confidence, and results. I'm your host, Jamie Falasz, and the Group Practice Accelerator podcast is on the air. Hey everyone, thanks for joining me again this week because today is the final chapter of our Freedom Formula series. It's 5 curated episodes with one thing in mind, and that's helping you as a founder, principal, or leader of your healthcare business build and really enjoy personal freedom. Because like DeWalker and I asked you to think about in part 1, what do you really have if you don't have personal freedom? Something to think about. And over the last 4 episodes, we introduced some things for you to consider and act on, like where do you stand now in terms of valuation? And what would a buyer think of your business? Do you want to work in or on the business? Critical operational considerations. What do you want your future to look like post-exit? And even investing when you have that post-sale chunk of capital. So today, we're going to bring in an element that we alluded to in a couple of these episodes, and we definitely want to cover it well. And that element can provide you with not only more personal freedom, but freedom through increased production and valuation and confidence. And that's doctor development and clinical coaching. And who better to help us walk through today's topic in our 5th and final chapter of the Freedom Formula is my colleague and Polaris clinical coach, Dr. Vivek Solanki, who can provide firsthand knowledge and experience and data as to what a well-implemented doctor development program can do for you and your organization. Hey, Vivek, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me. How are you today?
Good to see you. Good to see you. So let's start with some foundational pieces. For those that haven't listened to an episode on what you really do for our clients in terms of clinical coaching, can you give us kind of just a brief overview of that program? And then I have a whole bunch of questions for you.
Absolutely. So baseline is evaluating somebody's business in terms of a clinical lens. Like what scope of services are they providing? So this could be bread and butter dentistry, crown bridge, dentures, partials. There's nothing wrong with it. Or this could be a mixture of that plus dental implants. It could be somebody that's doing full arch dentistry. So what is the scope of services? That's the first thing. And then at what level is it being done inside the business? Is it, let's just say crown and bridge. If a doctor is doing 3 crowns a month, they're not probably doing a lot of crown and bridge within that business. If they're doing, multiple 10, 20 crown and bridge, then I would assume that they have a pretty good protocol and that they're pretty proficient and efficient in doing that for patients. So the first thing is, what is it that I'm going to say I see, right? And on the clinical side, because what is it that I see from my lens? And I'm looking at it from a general dentist perspective. I'm looking at it from a multi-specialty model. I'm also looking at it as a periodontist because many GP practices, perio seems to sometimes escape through the cracks, and we keep those people in maintenance when a lot of these patients could save their teeth with definitive surgery, but maybe the principals or the owners just don't know how to implement that. How do we bring in a specialist? How do we even set that program up? So there's so many different levels. I just talked through it, but that's really understanding what somebody's business is operating like, and then what it is that their goals are and where they want to go. And so that's kind of the first part of what we do when we come in.
What that brings to mind, like what is the trigger event? There has to be something that motivates people to, or compels them is probably a better word, compels them to reach out. Like what does that look like for them, and what triggers them to reach out and think about a clinical coaching, a doctor development program?
We don't know as clinicians, and even in business, like we don't know what we don't know. And when we as principals, so I mean the doctor owner groups, everybody who's trying to scale, but they're somewhat in the chair. When we're in the chair, the administrative side in the business, running the business, that is a juggling act between clinical care and that. But now you need to add on like this layer of CE. Like I want to learn full arch, or I want to do more all on X, more implants. And how do I bring this in? One, what supplies do I get? Which implant systems? How do I train my team? The restorative docs. So many levels of this. And really, it starts with the individual saying that it's okay to ask somebody for help, especially somebody who's done it before. And that's the first part. It's really an internal process. Is those individuals have realized that they want to continue to grow and expand, but from a clinical lens, and then they reach out because this is where I want to go.
That's what I was wondering. Is it a level of self-awareness where you go, gosh, it's not that I'm unhappy doing what I'm doing, but I could be doing more. I could be more confident in my case presentation. Maybe the other providers in the practice could be more confident in their skills and case presentation and expanding their skills as well. So that's what I was kind of in the back of my
Mhm.
mind thinking, is it a self-awareness thing that
Yes.
really helps people reach out?
It is. It is. And that's what makes the relationship with our clients so good, because there's no egos, and some of the things that the clients are doing are phenomenal, and we look at it and it's like, wow, you have a really good process with some of these aspects of dentistry, but here's where I've been successful in the same model. And then you try it and you implement some of these drills. We've done these podcasts in the past and these drills on how we help develop our associates to empower them. And then they try it and it's like an aha effect, it sparks this new fire within the business, and that it's just trickles from top down, all the way from leadership down to the doctors growing and feeling excited about what they're doing in the business.
And that's something that I want to point out to our listeners too, for those that have missed our episodes in the past talking about clinical coaching, is that you go in there, this is one-on-one. This is shoulder to
Mhm.
shoulder dentistry where it's mentorship. It's not meant to be judgmental, but it is meant to be honest and in your best interest to make you a better doctor, right? Does
Mhm.
that sum it up?
Exactly.
So my next question is about bringing in specialty, because I
Mhm.
know that's important to a lot of people, and we've talked about this in the past. How fast can someone bring in a specialty like perio, for example?
Mhm. Well, client that we're working with right now, from the inception of working with them, we had a periodontist within the first 2 months into their business, traveling to multiple locations and kind of getting into the culture of their business.
Oh wow,
Yeah,
that's
so it was quite fast
yeah.
because ads went out. We interviewed together. We developed the program together, and then, like you described, one-on-one mentorship. So I would be in the office, and how are you doing consults? Because before I did any of this, I was a number one traveling periodontist. It's what I did for many years. So how are you doing consults? How is your case acceptance? What are the ways that you're going about educating your patients about the need to help them get healthy? How are you doing that? And so, a lot of his processes were fantastic, but here are some tips and tricks that have helped me and that have helped people that I've worked with over time. And we try this, and then there's an impact and there's a win, and it's important to celebrate those wins. So then once that happens, you got to let them kind of grow with it and keep moving forward, because then they'll reach the next challenges. Now, how do I juggle consults and surgeries? Well, before there were no surgeries on the schedule, there were no consults. But it's not just about bringing specialty in. It's also about awareness within the entire group. A lot of perio comes from hygiene.
Right.
So sitting down with the entire hygiene teams and helping them understand, when is the time for a referral for perio? What am I looking for? Not having to just manage disease or watch people lose their teeth in a practice. Like, now there's an extra avenue to take some of that weight off of the hygiene team. and kind of have to propose it to the hygiene team in excitement, like here's a resource for you to help you.
Yeah.
And then the consults start coming in, both from the GP side, from hygiene side, and then that's how the entire perio program grew. But within 3 months, it was running really well. I'm excited about that.
Well, I'm excited about it too, and I have more questions on it. But yeah, looking at it from a hygienist perspective, how exciting
Mhm.
would that be to have a periodontist on site? You're keeping it within your four walls. So think about patient perspective.
Mhm.
They don't want to have to go somewhere else, right? They're working with the same
Exactly.
faces all the time. And from a business perspective, look at what that just did for your
Mhm.
bottom line.
Mhm.
Something to think about. And like you touched on, building a schedule, working with the entire team, right
Mhm.
down to treatment planning, case acceptance, and educating patients. It's all under your roof.
Mhm.
So what I think that's a wonderful thing that you do. But I want to ask also, and I know we can't disclose names and I don't want to get into too many specifics, but let's talk about what that did for the business when you brought Perio in and you deployed and implemented your clinical coaching program with this group that you were working with.
An immediate lift within the first quarter.
Wow.
So immediate. We try to say, um, our goal is to be able to see a lift within the business from a clinical standpoint within the first 6 months. So we saw a meaningful lift in the first quarter, which created more excitement about what we're doing together. And then we can start, now fine tuning the programs and the foundations that we've built. And the beauty about this is that it doesn't just impact the clinical team, because in order for Perio to close their cases and help patients within the business, you have to have hygiene on board. The team has to learn how to treatment plan for perio. They have to learn how to talk about a little bit of a little bit higher dollar dentistry sometimes in these cases, because the fee schedules are a little bit different,
Yeah.
and these procedures are foreign. So once the teams are training to do these things and support the doctors in closing cases, that trickles over onto the general dentistry side, where their current systems, which are awesome, they benefit now from the things that are happening on the perio side, and they start tightening up some of those systems, and it's just a compound effect.
And I want to ask you about your expectations with them specifically, because I know every group is different that you work with,
Mhm.
but when you went in there, what did you expect to happen and on what time frame?
The biggest thing is always, people put their guard up, especially doctors, because one, it's hard for a doctor to say, I don't know how to do this and I need help,
Yeah.
right? And that's normal.
Yeah.
Everybody has
Done
that built in
it.
them.
Yeah.
Exactly. But the ones who succeed the most know what they can do well and where they need help and what they need help with to get to that finish line in that toolbox that they carry. So coming in as a colleague, no egos here. I'm here to help. And that creates a really good culture where now you have it where, some of the doctors in the group are asking, hey, you haven't said anything to me. Like, what could I do better?
Yeah. We all
And
like
so
a
it's
little.
nice because, yeah, because it's created, they see their colleagues, the associate A maybe doing fantastic, but associate B, general dentist, may be getting more coaching because they're new. They got out of school a few years ago or residency. So time is being spent with them on how to treatment plan and how to be definitive and not make things confusing for your patients, which is going to ultimately lead to better dentistry, more fun for you on the clinical side, and case acceptance, and then trickle down all the way to meaningful impact in the business, right?
Yeah.
So now you see doctors seeing other people getting coached and they're like, hey, can you give me some tips? But these doctors are phenomenal. Like some of them are doing really well. But
Yeah.
that's when I talk about culture and that camaraderie, that is a very specific example of what I mean. If somebody like me goes in, or any type of coach or consultant comes in with a huge ego, or if they come in you have to do it this way, that's not going to be conducive to an environment where we can all learn and grow together.
Yeah.
And so is a fine line on how to do it. And eventually you create a culture where people then start asking each other questions for help, and they start sharing challenging cases with each other so others can grow from it. And it creates a more almost like an internal residency program within the group.
And I think you touched on something there that's important. And it's the human side of it. I think that all of us want to be good at everything. Most of us want it, and we're just not. That's not how we operate as
Right.
human beings. But sometimes asking for support or asking for feedback can be a little uncomfortable at first.
Mm-hmm.
But I like the way that you humanize this process and make it very specific to what
Mm-hmm.
works for each person.
Mm-hmm.
That's not an easy thing to do. So we love that you're able to do that. Um, I want to look at some outcomes. So we talked about these first few months and maybe focus like on a 3-month segment, a quarter. Can we look at the financial and then even just as importantly, the personal and professional outcomes? Because that changes you as a provider, right? And I wanted to press you a little on the financial side because I think listeners want to know. On
Mm-hmm.
the lift, was it a 2% lift? Was it a 5% lift, or was it a 10 to 20% lift? Like where
Around a 20% lift initially
oh, wow.
inside.
Okay.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
very good to know.
20 to 25% lift, and then just continued growth from
Wow,
here on out.
that's
Yeah.
meaningful. Definitely.
Yes.
But there's also a side of it as a clinician, as a provider and doctor, like that's an outcome in and of itself. What did you see
Yes.
developing for these doctors in their, I'll
You
say personality, but you know what I'm getting at.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, one, you get more buy-in because in the beginning everybody is going to be very cordial and listen. But the way that the drills are set up is, I'll use perio for example. Watch somebody do a consult, and then immediately after, let's sit down together and let's talk about everything down to the detail. Where did you stand? How did you sit? What did you say? What did the patient say when you said that?
Mm,
Did, if there's an infection, did you create urgency? Did you think the patient understood you? And ultimately, did the patient schedule? So then breaking all of those things down, let's try it another way. And on the next consult, I'd like you to do these things. And then you just see like their faces light up in the room because they're feeling so much more comfortable. They like feel free to tell somebody that there's a problem there. And so many young doctors, even seasoned doctors, we feel like we can't tell a patient like there's an infection or a problem. It's like we put it there. We didn't put it there. We're just fixing it for somebody. So why getting all this emotions involved and just telling somebody, here's the problem, here's what we need you to do. I got you. I'm going to take care of you. Let's just fix it.
yeah.
And so that once they get past that point and they see immediate gratification, there's a win right there. The patient says, thank you. I understand. Like you explained it to me. I need to get this fixed. And then the patient is motivated because of the way that the doctor communicated with them. You've created buy-in. You've created trust with the process with that doctor, and that doctor is good now because they're going to want to duplicate that workflow for many of their consults. It's just now you can look at the data, and now you can start saying, well, how many consults did you have today? How many people moved forward with you, and what are you struggling with? And now there's a open communication. There's people coming and asking for help. I'm doing great with osseous surgery, but for some reason I can't convey tissue grafts to somebody, as an example.
Okay.
And so that's what happens on the specialty side. That's what happens on the GP side. GP side meaning, they're already doing really well, but now they want to do more larger cases, more full large cases. And some of these doctors really have great capabilities to do it. They just want to get better at educating their patients and closing their cases so that they can give those clinical outcomes to their patients.
Well, and like anything else, it's practiced, right?
Yes.
You have to spend time, and you call them drills, but they are they're
Mhm.
practiced like anything else. And I'll bring up one thing that I thought was wonderful at our masterclass back in January that you
Mhm.
talked to the group about, and it's something so small and elementary that we probably all do back in school, regardless of the clinical profession. It's eye contact with the patient when you're talking to them. So many
Mhm.
people are, entering notes over here on the computer and they're looking at something and doing this, talking about, hey, Mr. Jones, you have, caries on 31, we have to do, or you need a root canal. It's not here.
Mhm.
It needs to be right here because that's where human interaction takes place. Otherwise,
Correct.
you're just conveying information and you really don't
That's
know if they're absorbing it or hearing you.
mhm. Mhm. Agreed. And those are very basic fundamentals that we all take for granted. Maybe we're rushed and we have a hygiene check or we have to do something, but understanding that if we were in the reverse and we were there seeing a doctor,
Yeah.
we would want to see somebody talking to us. I want to see if you're paying attention to me, and when you explain it to them and then you're not telling them what to do, you're giving them awareness because it wasn't there. But when they see the impact that it had on their patient in the communication cycle, they now understand. And so it's not something that has to be memorized, it's not something that has to be enforced, it's just something that helps them navigate their day with less stress, and
Mhm.
it gives them more satisfaction in the things that they're doing every day, which is dentistry.
Yeah, exactly. But, think about your day. Human interaction is such a big part of it. But if you take that out and make it your job just a function, that's no fun at all. And, it's interesting. I had a root canal over the winter that really snuck up on me. And I have to give a shout out to Dr. Wachter at Elevate Dental Partners here in Scottsdale because he sat down like this with me and we talked about what he
Mhm.
saw, what my options were. And, with my background, I'm sure you do it too. We notice everything.
Mhm.
And he was so good at all of these elements. So that was refreshing to see someone really take the time to engage one on one with another human being and make sure that I was comfortable.
Mhm.
At the time, I don't think he knew what my background was.
Mhm.
Can't just assume. So,
Yeah.
anyway, off on a tangent. But I also want to ask you for that group that you worked with, what would next steps look like for them? Because keeping this personal freedom theme in mind, what would growth expansion look like for them? Like what's next steps in their development look like?
And so the fundamentals always need to be touched on, and it's kind of revisiting. So typically for me, when when stats drop in something I'm involved with, it's not the economy, it's not the environment, it's not the weather, it's that we've deviated from the things that have made us successful. So we need to go back, and this the mirror in the moment. What am I doing wrong? Like, what am I doing wrong in terms of my consults? And typically an individual will find that something changed in their consult process, something is rushed, something is not presented the way that it used to be. Administrative side of it, are treatment plans getting out the same day? Are there handoffs if need be to introduce that coordinator? Are the patients getting closed? Are the deposits being put down? Like just these small steps, which all make up one storybook. So that's the fundamentals always need to be addressed, but it's a different level addressed. The stats are one thing, right? The numbers are going to grow regardless as long as we do the right thing. But the doctor side of it is you're now having a little bit more sophisticated conversation. It's I want to have more impact with my schedule now. I know I can do these surgeries, but how are you able to see these consults at the same, like, how do you juggle your schedule? How do you schedule effectively? How do I do my procedure more efficiently? And so the conversations become more about becoming efficient because it's understood now that people have a good understanding of how to close their cases, but they may need help in certain areas still. And so it's just TLC reinforcing things within the group. For the perio, not forgetting that it's not a competition between perio and GP. It's a camaraderie, and they have that. But also, where is it that your patients come from? On the hygiene side. So don't forget about that. Right? As you continue to get busy, always touching base with the team that is looking out for you on the non-surgical side of things, because that's where your consults come from, and that's where you're going to continue to have an impact in the patient care in that office, and ultimately minimize disease and help patients stay healthy. So these are things that you always want to train them to do so they can do it on their own and continue to grow within the business.
And then, because thinking of a growing group, or if someone is thinking of, going to sale at some point because they're looking for a different kind of personal freedom, do you mentor doctors, or let's say the founder, to then in turn be the mentor within those locations?
Yeah, I don't think that it's ever a truly passive experience. There's always some degree that we have to do, but where we make a trade-off is if the clinical side of things is running well, then that gives you the freedom to then mentor and oversee things. And you'll find that there are always doctors within the group who need the mentorship, and they may not reach out. And, humans lie, numbers don't lie. So you just look at the stats. And if somebody's stats are down, then it may just be some coaching that's needed. It may be that they need guidance and they help to have a better impact and make better patient outcomes. So, that's one thing, is that it gives them the freedom to do these things within the business and mentorship, especially on the clinical side. But then in terms of enterprise value and what's looked upon as a group, yeah, materially you're not that involved at that point.
Yeah.
And if you look at the historical past practice, somebody's going to want the principal to function in that capacity. And so if you have a day every couple weeks, or 2 days every 2 weeks where you have mentorship, then that, once a strategic comes in, or if you have that outcome, then that is carried over into this next relationship, and that gives some level of freedom there. So
Yeah,
it's a progressive pathway to get there.
it is. And then I think about that from a buyer perspective too, because you're creating stability and you're creating this organic growth within not only your four walls, but the four walls of every location within your group. And that in and of itself can help create personal freedom. And then I look at it from the partnership perspective. Can you talk a little bit about partnership, and I'm trying to phrase this the right way, maybe the benefits of someone who's been through a doctor development program like this in terms of what that would look like for a partner is versus not having been through this?
Yeah, I mean, it really helps. It helps the business in so many aspects. One is when a strategic or somebody's looking to have a partnership with the larger group, the group that has JV structures or partnership pathways set up is going to be looked at a little bit more favorably, because that is just going to give the buyer some more security. They're going to give them more confidence in the deal. And why shouldn't a group do that if everybody's aligned? It's a win-win for both sides, the doctor joining on the equity structure and the principals in the business. But if the coaching allows development in the office, it allows the numbers to grow, but then it also provides someone with a foundation to say, hey, we have invested in this doctor, and now we're going to do something more for them and give them a JV structure here, which is going to have a meaningful impact for them. And it's also going to have a meaning impact when a large strategic or someone comes in who's looking at another level of partnership.
Yeah, that 100%. And that's kind of what I was getting at. From every perspective, this benefits your business, right? There's just no two ways about it. Well, Vivek, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Absolutely.
And talking through this. I was kind of excited to hear your take on this most recent client, and hopefully we'll have them on the show here soon to get into it even further. But to all of you, we love the questions that you send us, so keep them coming and we'll keep delivering all the content that you ask for. As always, if you want to learn about any of our Polaris expert advisory services, including clinical coaching, or maybe there's a topic that we haven't covered that you want to hear about, you can send us an email to info@polarishealthcarepartners.com, and be sure to visit our website at polarishealthcarepartners.com, where you'll find weekly articles to grow and support your healthcare business, along with access to all podcast episodes, events, and a whole lot more. Thanks so much for being a loyal listener and subscriber. If you enjoyed today's episode, please share it with a colleague and be sure to leave us a rating on any of your favorite podcast platforms. We'll see you on the next episode of the Group Practice Accelerator Podcast.